The Petersen Automotive Museum is always looking for overlaps with the automobile and other aspects of culture, whether it's movies, music, art, engineering, design, etc. And so we always have feelers out for ideas where we get that kind of overlap. We don't want to just be a pure car museum, we kind of think of ourselves as a culture museum. A couple of years ago we learned that an exhibition in London, Bond in Motion is what it was called, featuring a number of these cars was coming to an end. We saw an opportunity, we went to London and asked about what was going to be happening next with these cars and learned that there wasn't a plan for them right away. So we engaged with Eon Productions, which is the production company that produces the Bond films, and entered some negotiations with them, and we ended up coming up with a plan for bringing the cars here to the United States in what's actually the first official exhibition of Bond vehicles ever in the United States, which is pretty remarkable given the fact that the Bond franchise is actually now 60 years old, and in 60 years there's never been an official exhibition of Bond vehicles in the United States. So this is the first occasion that they've been brought here on an official basis, meaning with the approval and the endorsement of Eon Productions. And we have a pretty great assortment of vehicles. This is not just cars, it's also airplanes, submarines, boats, and other vehicles of various types that are sometimes even hard to describe. We have them representing movies as far back as 1963 and going all the way up to the present day. This Aston Martin Db5 to my left was driven by Daniel Craig in the movie coming out this week in the United States, No Time to Die. We don't yet know what's going to happen to the exhibit after this, if we're just going to be the first iteration of a traveling sort of series. These cars may go back to England and may go back into storage. They may end up touring around the United States, but that remains to be determined. Regardless, we're very excited to be the first location of an official Bond exhibition or an official Bond vehicle exhibition ever in North America. I would say there are many brands that have been associated with James Bond. You've got Jaguar, BMW, a Land Rover, but I think really starting with this car, the DB5, Aston Martin became the brand that is truly synonymous with Bond. Although James Bond drove cars very prominently in movies prior to Goldfinger in 1964, it was this car, or not this specific one, but this model in Goldfinger in 1964 that really set the whole sort of ball rolling in terms of cars being a crucial part of the Bond movies and cars containing gadgets. That's the really important thing, is that it's not just a car, it's a car full of gadgets, machine guns, oil slicks, flamethrowers, ejection seats and things like that. The cars used in Bond films before this had none of that. They were simply cars that Bond used to get around. But with the introduction of the DB5, the cars became almost characters of their own with gadgets and that sort of thing. This car was chosen, or this model was chosen specifically because it was extremely British, extremely beautiful, and really just fit the sort of debonair appearance and attitude of James Bond. It was a perfect match at the time. And since then, many Aston Martins have been used in James Bond movies. We've got 3 or 4 others in this exhibit alone, and they continue to be used up until the present movie, No Time to Die, with some of the latest actually 2 brand new Aston Martin models appear in the current movie, in addition to this exact car. It's worth noting that this car, although it's the same model as the DB5 that appeared in Goldfinger in 1964, this specific vehicle on display is one that's been used in 5 later films: GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die. As I mentioned, driven by Daniel Craig in the most recent movie. And this specific car is the most used car in James Bond movie history, given that it was used in so many films. I would take you probably to the Lotus submarine, used in The Spy Who Loved Me. Yeah, that, and then another Aston Martin, the DB10, which is the sort of the conclusion to our exhibit. What's great about the Lotus is that it's not just a car with gadgets, but it's actually a car that completely transforms. Its mode of operation. It goes well beyond what had been done with Bond cars before it, where they had an enormous number of exciting, as I've said, gadgets, weapons, and sort of hidden characteristics and traits, and could, in some cases, perform some very unexpected stunts. But this is the first instance of a car completely transforming into something different, and also having all of the interesting gadgets that became typical for James Bond vehicles. If you've seen the movie, you know certainly what happens here. He drives this car off a pier, and you at first think that everybody's going to, suffer a dire fate, but in fact, at the last moment, it transforms itself into a submarine, and everybody is perfectly fine. And they even find a way to work quite a bit of humor into the usage of the car as a submarine. I especially like the part right here where he drives out of the water afterwards and drops some fish out of the side of the car for the passersby to look at. They're always incorporating humor, no matter how serious the underlying plot is of these. And I think for a lot of people, although the DB5 Aston Martin is really the car most associated with Bond, this is easily a second favorite among most Bond fans. It also was an entirely new brand, so the use of a Lotus, which at the time, the design of this car was really, I guess I wouldn't say unusual. It was part of a revolution in design, a movement away from the curvy designs of the 1950s and 60s and towards more of an angular, crisp wedge design of the 1970s. So this car had a very modern appearance at the time. It was very up-to-date, very sort of futuristic, being part of that design trend of the 1970s. So that kind of contributes to its unique and interesting nature compared to some of the more classic cars that you see, or more typical cars that you see James Bond drive. It's my understanding there were 7 of these built for use in the underwater scenes of the movie. 6 of those survived filming. One of them was accidentally destroyed during somewhat of an explosion. Actually, I think it was compressed air or compressed water explosion during the scene where it leapt off the pier into the water. But of the 6 that remain, this one is owned by the Fleming Foundation here in the United States. Elon Musk does own one of the other ones, and there are a number of others out there in other collections. Yes, it's true. Half this car is missing, but for very good reason. This is from the movie For Your Eyes Only, and up above the car you can see a scene of a fully, well, at least partially intact Citroën 2CV. If you watch this scene in the movie, you'll see how the camera shifts really quickly between views like this, where sort of the camera is outside the vehicle and you can see the entire vehicle, to camera angles where you're looking through the windshield directly at James Bond and his companion during the chase scene. So this, I'm sure it's pretty obvious what this is. This is where the cameras and the cameraman would have been situated for all of the scenes where they filmed straight through the windshield, looking at Roger Moore as he performed one of his very famous getaways. It's an intense scene, but also very humorous and very typical of Bond. It's I think one of the classic Bond chase scenes, incredibly well choreographed, very complicated. And yeah, this is an important part of how they pulled it off. We have Aston Martin down there, we have a Jaguar, we actually have 4 Aston Martins down there and a Jaguar, yeah. At this end of the gallery, we're getting into the Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig era. Another Aston over here to the right. Actually, this actual vehicle, which we're allowing our guests to sit on as a photo op, was ridden by Pierce Brosnan in the chase scenes in the snow and ice that you can see depicted in the background here. The other vehicles behind it all were from the same film. In fact, we're all combined in the same sort of chase sequences. You see the Aston Martin and then the Jaguar in the back, driven by the villain. Aston Martin being Bond's car, the green Jaguar being the villain's car. In fact, you can see in the image here part of the chase scene where the villain is chasing James Bond. That's these 2 cars. And I believe the scenes with the Ski-Doo come immediately before this, if I remember right. But this was Pierce Brosnan's, and people are really enjoying the opportunity to sit on a genuine Hollywood vehicle ridden or driven by one of the stars of the movie. You asked about my favorite vehicles earlier, and we've passed by a pretty wide assortment of boats and airplanes and other flying objects, but really, other than the Lotus that we mentioned earlier, I think this vehicle here at the end, this Aston Martin, would be my other favorite. This is the Aston Martin Db5. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful cars ever created for any reason in automotive history. To me, it looks like it was sculpted from a single block of metal, even though it's largely carbon fiber, but it has that just very pure, beautiful appearance. One thing really unique about this car is that it was developed, the design was developed entirely for use within the James Bond movie. This was not a car that pre-existed and that the producers for Bond decided, oh, this will work for our movie. This was actually conceived, designed, developed, and built just for just for Spectre, and they built 10 of them with the expectation that some of them would be used in the movie and that some of them in the end might not be needed in the movie, and those that were not needed for the movie would be sold to the public, really resulting in one of the rarest and most exclusive Aston Martins ever built. I'm not sure how many of the 10 survived the filming, but this is an example of one of the filming models. So the exterior is complete, however the interior, most of the components are false. This was driven and used in the movie, but it's one of the filming examples, unlike some of the other examples of the total of 10, which were complete, fully drivable cars that were then sold to the public and are in private collections today. So really a gorgeous car. The vehicles here are owned by 3 entities. The vast majority of them are owned by an organization called the Fleming Foundation, which is an independent nonprofit foundation based in Illinois that has for a few decades now been collecting James Bond vehicles, sort of unofficially originally, but now they have so many of them that Eon Productions in the United Kingdom recognizes them as the collector of James Bond vehicles. And the Fleming Foundation works closely with Eon Productions for exhibits like this. 8 of the vehicles in here, including this one, came from Eon Productions itself in the United Kingdom. They maintain a collection of vehicles in a warehouse there in the UK. And a single one, this green Jaguar over here to my right, is owned by the Petersen Automotive Museum. So yeah, we have three total sources for the cars in the exhibit. I enjoy the extra intensity, emotion, sort of drama of the Daniel Craig era, and I think he was an amazing choice as an actor. I have seen the newest movie, and that really, if there was ever doubt that he was the right person for the role for the last few movies, I think that pretty much seals the deal. He's pretty amazing.